Hey everybody, welcome to Driving Cheap with Jeff. On today's video, I'm going to show you what not to do when putting your lower unit back on. I was under the impression that you could just lower it down and slide it right back up on there with no effort, just basic plug and play. I found that out to be incorrect, and we're going to take this apart today, and I'll show you what you need to focus on. Somebody brought it to my attention. I was at the boat ramp the other day, and I put the boat in the water. I was all excited. I spent about 20 hours servicing this motor, getting it right, and I thought I had everything. It was late at night. I was using my Hyper Tough flashlight. At about 10:30 at night, when I bolted this thing back up, everything slid right up into place, and disappointingly enough, I went to use the boat yesterday and it wouldn't go into gear. And somebody brought it to my attention that was at the boat ramp. They said they made the same mistake, and when installing the foot, you do have to line up the splines for the shift linkage going into the foot coming out of the exhaust section of the motor. I did not know that. So I'm going to lower this back down. I'm going to show you what you need to do to drop your lower unit down. Is that good? Okay, the other night when I was taking this thing apart, I did not realize how heavy this was. I watched another YouTube video with a man that lowered this down on a 250 outboard, and he was actually able to lift this back into place and get the bolts started. I was able to do this too. I had to trim the motor up to actually get this on, and I think that's where I made my mistake, and I didn't line up my splines. This time I took this heavy-duty ratchet strap that I got while I was in the military, and I hooked it on either side of the engine where you would lift the motor off of the outboard itself, where you would pull the engine right off. And I lowered this down under this strap here, and I'm going to show you how we take this thing off. Okay, first you pop off this piece of rubber. All right, pop this off, move it out of the way. Then you have a 12mm bolt that is under here, and you take your 12mm and you take off your anode. I have a brand new anode on here. Loosen this thing up. Hold this. That bolt will stay in place. Drop this thing right off. All right, set this out of the way. Put the bolt in. All right. Now we have a 14mm. You don't need any kind of extension or anything. Well, actually, I forgot there's an additional bolt in here. Once you remove that anode, there is another 14mm bolt located under here. So you take this off first. All right, very carefully. All right. Oh, I'm tightening it. My bad. Loosen this up, because this is the hardest one to get to, so you want to take this one off first. Alright. Get it out. Drop this down. This one's longer than all the others. Set this aside. There's 8 bolts in total that hold this foot on here. 8 bolts. Drop this down. Come all the way out. Alright. Bam. Take this out. Now we don't need an extension or anything for the others. But right on here, I'm going to take the middle ones out last. These are nice and tight. They got 2 washers on each bolt. Take them right out. Oh, accidentally flipped the switch. Alright, you can only get down so far before you have to take it out or else you'll back your socket right into it. You'll have to go back the other way. All right. Lowering the last bolt. This was off recently, so it actually came off pretty easy when I took it off the first time. This is something I will be checking frequently, because sand gets in here in front of the water pump. That is concerning. Maybe it is because the last owner ran aground before he sold it to me. I don't know, but I'm going to be on the safe side with this. Set these right here so we don't get any sand on them. It's clean. Okay. Wiggle this down. There we go. So we've dropped this down. All right, and so much easier with a ratchet strap. Now we can lower this down even more if we want to. But really, everything was clean from how I did it. I took the water pump off, I resealed all this. Now all I'm needing to do is check the shift linkage. We need to check the shift linkage, which is over here. And this spline right there, do you see in there, there's a spline with grease on it. Kaylee, do you see that? It's right there. Now we need to look inside there with our Hyper Tough flashlight and look at that. See where that lines up. That is our shift linkage. All right, I can back off so I can see. All right, now let's see, and it is definitely something that moves, I think. Oh, look at that, look at that, it wiggles. I did not know that. Silly me. That wiggles around there. So that can go right past it. And so anybody that drops their lower unit, don't forget to hold that in place, probably with a flat screwdriver, and make sure that that sleeves up in there, because it can absolutely go back together nice and snug without being in that little tube right there. So right now we are going to, a little bit here, let me move some stuff out of the way. A little bit, let me blow on it. Or, let me just blow on it, it'll be fine, there's a little bit. All right, that's good. Now we are going to raise this up. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get right up close to it to where I can guide it in. Really, I can hold my fingers on that while I ratchet strap this thing up. While I ratchet this up. Okay. So, this is the handy thing about a ratchet strap. I pretty much know that I have to be right here and very carefully lift this. Kelly, would you mind holding this straight, like line this up while you film me? But don't grab it right there, that's a pinch point. So you want to have it right there on that. Then you don't have to worry about your hands being pinched. Your fingers. Daddy has to do the same thing. I have to do the same thing, I'm sorry. Where you get this directly over the top of that. Pull it up. Once we get it in there, we're good to go. Okay, so now we have lined up the geared shaft that comes out of the lower unit with the plastic tube coming down from the upper housing. And now everything seems to look like we could just guide it up. As long as this tube right here lines up with this tube, it's going to go right in. But we clearly could tell that that this lower unit can be installed without lining up the holes, and of course it will not work when that happens. So we and it takes two people. I don't know that I could do this by myself, just for the fact that I need somebody to hold the front of this, and the to crank the ratchet strap is all the way to the top of the motor. Maybe if you had something where you could crank down here and line up, I'm sure that's what other people use, but this is the only thing that I had that looked like I wouldn't scratch my motor all up. So this is what I'm using. So now I'm gonna hold this, and or I'll just keep. No, you're not tall enough for that, I don't think. All right, let's crank this thing up. Oh. Make sure we're still lined up. Because I accidentally released the ratchet strap. That was not good. So let's reline this tube up here. There it is. That's probably better to see. You have to line that tube up. Now it's in. Just barely in there. All right. Don't forget to do that. I forgot, and I was going nowhere on the boat ramp. So let's crank it up a little more. Not releasing by, I mean, it's easy to accidentally release one of these straps. It really is. It's an old ratchet strap. Probably 20 years old. Let's look up under here. Make sure we're still lining up. Everything's looking good. We're going right into position. All right. Might even, just to be on the safe side, let's spray a little silicone in there. Just to be on the safe side. I love this PB Blaster silicone. Comes out nice and thick. And you need to use it on boat motors, on everything. Look at that. Spray that silicone. Alright. Silicone and everything softens it right up. Get over here on this side. As salt water gets on this thing, you've got to put silicone everywhere, or else you'll be sorry. Yeah, lined up. Let's bring it up. Very careful. Get whatever we can in here, hand tight. Really shift it. Alright. And while we line this up, here we go. Alright, we're getting lined up. I'm paranoid of cross-threading, stripping stuff out, so it's going to take a minute. Now another idea is to okay, all right, we're still lined up in the tube. I was unable to get the bolts to thread in this way. I didn't want to risk it, so it looks to me like the only way to line this thing up is you get your one bolt ready, and you can crank this down tight. I loosen it back up to demonstrate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up a little bit more. All right, not as much as I can. All right, that's it. I don't want to bring it up any more because it could damage something. So what I'm going to do, now I'm going to raise the lower unit. All right, I'm going to hold this steady. At the same time, I'm going to raise this baby up. Raise her on up. Bam, look at that. Okay, now it's slid on. All right, and I'm looking in, and everything looks like it's going together like it should. Everything looks good. All right, that's what it took right there. Then I'm going to wiggle it on this side a little bit. Get that thing in there. There, pull down on that, kind of wiggle it back and forth. Get that thing in there. Oh yeah, that's it. That's good right there. Okay, we want everything nice and snug before we tighten anything up. All right, so let's go ahead and get our bolts in. Get all our bolts started. Thread it in finger tight. All right. On the other side, the bolts seem to be over here. Pick all these up, all the shorter ones. Slide these babies in. All right, there you go. It's threading right in. You kind of wiggle it as you thread it in. Has a little anti-seize on there. It's always good. Just put anti-seize on these bolts. Don't get frozen in there. All right, get them all in there. There we go. Get them all in there. That's what I like to do. I like get everything threaded before I do anything. Because you tighten one thing up, and then you can't get a bolt in for another thing. Never like that. You always want to make sure all your bolts are in before you do any tightening. Or else you'll just take it all loose again. All right. And you know, when this long one goes in here, you're good to go. Let me get my 14 millimeter socket. 12 and my 14, which is on the end of this. Actually, it's a 12. Maybe it wasn't. Yeah, it's 14. It's 14 millimeter. All right. So let's drive this one on up in here. So it's nice and cleaned off. Nothing on it. And that started in there. It's threading right in. That's what we want to see. We'll be good to go. Thread it right on in there. It's going right in nice and hand tight. So we got that one hand tight. What we got with these? Oh yeah. They're threading right in. You don't want to force, you want to strip these out. That would not be a good day. That would not be good. I'm gonna wiggle it around. There you go. Wiggle it. It's going. Alright. I'll get my socket on, my ratchet on here. Put this on here like this. Yep, it's not in there enough. Well, you see where my 14mm ratchet or socket is. I have one of these. These never stay in the carrier, but they are pretty useful. Wiggle it around as you put it in there, just threading right in. Just enough to get it to where you can get your socket on there. Alright, should be good. Yep. And start it down. Work it on in. Alright. Working. That's all it takes. All right. Okay, here we go. All right, you recording me real quick? All right, now I'm clearly having an issue with my muffs. They somehow lost tension. I don't know. I'm gonna have to return to get another set. But the transmission is working in forward. The lower unit is working in forward and reverse. And that makes me happy.